Are the 76ers going back to their tanking ways? Well, according to reports, the Sixers could soon shift their focus towards the future, towards the NBA draft, and towards next season, rather than trying to go all in at this year's NBA trade deadline and make a push for the playoffs. This is going to be sort of a turning point now for the 76ers franchise as a whole. So we're going to talk about it here on today's show. And before we get into it, I want to encourage you guys to subscribe to the channel if you're looking for a place to stay updated on the Philadelphia 76ers all year long. This is the place to be. And so far in the year of 2025, doing a little bit of a subscriber battle with our Celtics Today channel here at Chat Sports. And right now, they got a sizable lead over us in that subscriber count. Celtics Today has picked up 264 subs this calendar year. We have picked up 193. I hate the Boston Celtics. I'm sure a lot of you do as well. And I want to be able to beat them in all facets, in all forms. That includes in the court. That includes in the walls here at Chat Sports. So hit that sub button. Let's do the Celtics today what the Sixers did to Boston on Christmas Day. Hit that sub button again for year-round coverage of the Philadelphia 76ers. So let's get right into that report. And this is coming in from Tim Bontemps of ESPN, who went on NBA Today and basically explained what the Sixers' new strategy could be as we approach the NBA trade deadline. And here's what he had to say. I think the next 3 weeks going into that February 6th trade deadline are really going to define not only this season, but potentially the offseason for the Sixers. If these next few weeks do not go well, and frankly, the way this whole season has looked, it's hard to expect it to, this is a team that we could see pivoting to looking to focus on trying to keep that top 6 protected first round pick. And we talked about this a little bit on yesterday's show about this upcoming schedule and how this team is sort of in limbo right now. Look, these next few weeks for the Philadelphia 76ers could be franchise altering. When you think about where this team is at in the standings, of course, but with their personnel and with them trying to compete for a championship, of course, but not quite reaching those expectations, now they have to take a hard look in the mirror and say, what is best for the future of our organization? And, talking about that hard stretch coming up, just take a look. Again, if you have not been paying attention or are not informed on the schedule, man, it is brutal for the 76ers. Of course, that loss on Tuesday night to the Oklahoma City Thunder when pretty much nobody played for the 76ers. Now, as we record this on Wednesday, tonight against the Knicks, already Joel Embiid, Caleb Martin, several others are already listed out, with Tyrese Maxey and Paul George being questionable. So probably looking at another loss there against the New York Knicks, especially if those guys don't play. But then you had the Pacers. You have the Bucks. You're on the road against the Denver Nuggets. You have the best team, if not the second best team in the NBA, in the Cleveland Cavaliers. Then you play Chicago, which is the only team you'll play on this stretch that is under 500. That's lets you know how difficult this upcoming stretch of 13 games is for the 76ers. Then you return home for a little 6-game homestand. Then you play the Lakers at home. Then you got the Sacramento Kings, Denver again, Boston Celtics, Dallas Mavericks, and then you close out with the Miami Heat before the NBA trade deadline. That is a brutal stretch of games. Again, out of those 13 teams, of course, one of them already being a loss to the Thunder, 12 of them are 500 or better. And the Sixers this year, I believe, are now 4-20 against teams that are 500 or better. I think 11-3 against all other under 500 teams. This team just has not shown an ability to beat good basketball teams this season, whether they've been healthy or not. And as we go back to the point, this could really be a turning point for the Sixers organization. If you start to win these games and you prove you can beat good teams, shoot, you could become buyers at the deadline in just under a month. Morey, we know Daryl Morey is aggressive and always looking to make an upgrade and make a move. He will be aggressive if he sees some potential in this team and sees them winning games against good squads. But if you continue to lose, as they have been, against good teams, and you continue to fall in the standings, where you're currently the 11 seed out east, could we see a youth movement? Could we see this team look totally different going into next season and even possibly at the trade deadline. And I want to go back to something Tim Bontemps mentioned in his quote on NBA Today. He mentioned that this upcoming stretch could define not just this season for the Sixers, but the offseason for Philadelphia. Because they're not just looking, again, at retooling next year. They're looking at possibly keeping that top 6 pick and maybe starting a whole new youth movement for this team. And what could that mean for some of the older stars on this team, like a Joel Embiid, like a Paul George? Again, if the Sixers are able to land that top 6 pick, does Morey just say, let's take a step back. We have some young pieces here, some young talent, and a top 6 pick in what's supposed to be a pretty good draft. Do we just take a little bit of a reset and a retool and expand the future of this team? Again, the Sixers' first-round pick this season goes to the Oklahoma City Thunder unless it is number 1 through number 6. If it lands in that 1 through 6 range, the 76ers get to keep the pick. Otherwise, it goes to Oklahoma City. And that's why it's so pivotal right now, because where the Sixers are, they're kind of in that middle ground, right? They're not a bottom 6 team as of right now. So that pick would more than likely be going to the Oklahoma City Thunder. You do not want to be in a situation, if you're the 76ers, where you miss out on the playoffs, but you also have to give your pick away to the Thunder. That will be an absolute disaster. So Morey has to make a decision. Which one do you do? Do you tank and try to keep that top 6 pick, or do you go all in? And right now it's sounding like Morey might be leaning more towards tanking and trying to keep that top 6 pick. And if that does happen, could we see some major changes on the roster and in the organization? Could we see, after just one season, Paul George potentially be traded in the offseason? Could we even see a Joel Embiid trade? Are we starting to reach that level now with this organization where they're going to make some major changes and send out some of these stars to really take a hard reset? Look, maybe this is just what's best for the team long term, because we know the type of money you're paying Joel Embiid long term and the type of money you're paying Paul George long term, and you haven't seen success yet this season. And I get it, they haven't played a lot of games together, but that's part of the issue, is neither of them have really ever proven to be able to stay healthy throughout their entire careers outside of last season for Paul George. And I've always been one, I don't want to blow it up. I want to stick on to what we have and keep Joel Embiid. I know there's a lot of people in the camp of trade Joel Embiid that have been in that camp for a couple of years now. I've always been one to say, keep him. You don't trade one of the best players in the league. But we're reaching a turning point here with this organization, and I'm starting to think that might be what's best for the 76ers long term. So right now, talked a little bit about what might transpire if this team does decide to blow it up, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that on the back half of this show. But I want you to get in the comment section for me right now. Imagine that you are Daryl Morey, and you're sitting there today, and you have to make a decision. Either blow it up, reset the roster, trade Joel Embiid, trade Paul George, or you try to contend this season. You say, you know what, we committed these long-term contracts to these players, and I believe in the talent we have, we're going to contend. Type C, if you want this team to try to contend, and that's what you would do. Type B, if you were Daryl Morey, you would blow this whole thing up and just restart. I'm curious to see what the comment section is like, so get down in there, get active, and let me know your thoughts. Now, coming up next, we're going to do a little bit of exploring here. If the Sixers do decide to blow it up, how will this team look, and what will this roster look like moving forward? Who will stay? Who will go, both at this year's trade deadline and possibly in the offseason? Because there's a lot of moves that might have to be made. Certain players are going to be on their way out. Certain guys I think the Sixers would be smart to try and keep, again, if they do decide to try to reset everything. Before we get into that, look, one of the players you know that's going to be sticking around here is Jared McCain. Now, unfortunately, of course, out for the year with his injury, but before McCain got injured, he was hooping. He was the favorite for Rookie of the Year. He was just so far ahead of where he should have been and where people projected he could be. And he's proven to be an integral piece of this team moving forward. Ever since he's been out, the Sixers just have not been the same type of team. So if you want to get yourself a Jared McCain jersey, there's no better time than right now, because, again, you know he's going to be here for the long haul. Chatsports.com/McCain. Through our friends at Fanatics, you can go and get yourself a Jared McCain jersey right now. Don't hesitate. I know I'm going to be getting myself one of these, especially if the Sixers start to blow it up, because I know McCain will be around. Him and Maxey, a formidable duo in that backcourt, hopefully for years to come. All right. So let's start to take a look here at what might happen if the Sixers do decide to blow it up, to reset, to trade everybody, get younger, and try to get, again, that top 6 draft pick that they could get this season. The first step, and this is what the Sixers will have to look at the trade deadline, right? You have to decide what you're going to do, assuming you decide to blow it up, with your impending free agents at this year's trade deadline. And there's a few guys that you have to make decisions on sooner rather than later, because you don't want players to leave for nothing that you could get value from at this year's deadline. And there's 6 guys that are going to be expiring for the Philadelphia 76ers. First, we got Kelly Oubre, Andre Drummond, Eric Gordon. All 3 of those guys are on player option, so they could return if they'd want. But again, there's a chance they decline their player option, just become a free agent. And then you have Gershon Yabusele, Reggie Jackson, and Kyle Lowry. Those 3 are just straight up unrestricted free agents. At the end of the year, they'll be free to sign with whatever team they would like. I think when you look at this group of 6 players that you had to make decisions on, I think it's pretty obvious what 3 you can get value for. I think Kelly Oubre, Andre Drummond, and especially Gershon Yabusele would have very, very high trade value to contending teams. We've seen what Gershon Yabusele has been able to do for this team. It's been tremendous. Obviously, coming over from playing overseas, he's been great. Kelly Oubre, while he hasn't been the most efficient from 3 this season, still does provide a lot of other things that contending teams will value. And Andre Drummond, when he's healthy, is still a very solid rebounder and still can do some things on the defensive end of the floor. So I think it would be smart for the Sixers, if they are, again, rebuilding, to try to see what kind of value they can get, whether it's future assets, draft picks, things like that, for these players who, again, could leave for nothing. So in my opinion, especially those 3, if you can get some type of future assets, whether that be a young player or future draft capital for them, you absolutely make that move. You know, Eric Gordon, Reggie Jackson, Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry actually has a no-trade clause. I don't think the Sixers would trade him anyways. Just, you know, he's probably going to retire a Sixer. But like Reggie Jackson, Eric Gordon, you're not getting no value for those guys. Maybe a second-round pick. I guess if you can get it, you do it. But Kelly Oubre, Gershon Yabusele, and Andre Drummond are the 3 guys I'm really looking at that could potentially be moved at this year's trade deadline. So remember that. Those are guys that can be moved at this year's trade deadline. After that, then things start to get interesting, because now we start to talk about some of the bigger players. And of course, it's Paul George and it's Joel Embiid. Neither of them will be traded at this year's deadline. It's just not going to happen, right? But again, going back to what Bontemps said, this offseason and looking ahead is when major things could shake up, right? I think there's a chance that you could look to trade one of, if not both, Paul George and Joel Embiid in the offseason if you're looking to go in that direction. But there's a slight issue when it comes to trading both of these players. It's who wants these contracts, right? The Sixers gave Joel Embiid the max. They gave Paul George the max. And they're probably regretting both of those decisions right now because of their age, the money they're paying each player, and their injury histories. Just take a look at these contracts for Joel Embiid and Paul George. And let me tell you right now, if I'm another team in the NBA, why would I want to be the one paying Joel Embiid $69 million in 2028, 2029? Why? What team is going to look at that and say, yeah, you know what, we'll pay Embiid over $55 million for next season, then 59 the next, 64, 69 after that, with his injury history and what he's shown this season? It's just hard. You're not going to get good value for Embiid because teams aren't going to like the contract. So you're never going to get what you would hope to get for a player of his caliber. And then same thing goes for Paul George. Starting next season, making 51, then 54, then 56 million in 2027, 2028. Nobody wants to pay Paul George that contract. I think Embiid is a little more tradable because he's still such a good player. Paul George, honestly, I don't know if you even would be able to trade him. And if you do, you'd be getting pennies on the dollar, even considering where he's at right now, which is a significant drop-off from where he has been in his career. So that being said, if you do move off of all those guys, including Embiid and Paul George, and the guys I mentioned earlier, this is kind of the core that I see the Sixers moving forward with. Again, Kelly Oubre, Andre Drummond, Eric Gordon, Gershon Yabusele, Reggie Jackson, Kyle Lowry, and pending free agents, guys that are probably going to be gone. That leaves you with Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain. This is the backcourt of the future. No doubt about it. You build around these two. You let these two rock out. You hope McCain can come back from that injury and play well, and that's set. Justin Edwards has shown some good things, especially in the game against the Thunder, was very, very good, and I think deserves more minutes moving forward and deserves to be a part of this core, at least heading into next season. KJ Martin was someone that you signed with the idea that he'd be traded at the deadline. But if you're not going to be a buying team and you're not looking to improve on your roster, you might as well just keep him around. His contract for next season it's non-guaranteed. So you could always just let him go next season if you needed to. But I think he's a young player who was intriguing enough before he got hurt to keep around. Ricky Council, same thing. I've been a little disappointed at him with times this season. I'm not really taking that next step up, but there's no reason to let him go. You got him locked down on a great contract. And of course, you got Adem Bona as well on his rookie deal, who I think, clearly still needs some refinement and is a ways away from being a real rotational NBA player. But I think he's shown enough again where you hold on him and hope that he can continue to make strides because he has shown some signs. Just to wrap all this up, it is crazy to me to think that this is where the Sixers team is at right now. I mean, go back 6 months. Or go back to even just before the season started. Or go back to when the Sixers signed Paul George and we were live until like 2 a.m. Eastern time on the channel waiting for Philadelphia to sign PG. I mean, we were so excited. And, fans and analysts alike were just raving about how this team was going to be able to compete with the likes of the Boston Celtics and be at the top of the Eastern Conference. And this is finally the year the Sixers get it done. And now here we are. Probably one of the more disappointing seasons in recent memory for the Philadelphia 76ers. And now we're talking about possibly moving on in just one season from Paul George and possibly moving on from Joel Embiid. I never thought I'd be up here sitting here talking about this. I wish this wasn't the scenario we're in, but it's the scenario we're in. And at some point, you have to look at what is best for this team and this team's future. And I truly believe it might be taking a reset, accumulating young assets and draft picks, building around your young guys, Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain, and just admitting, you know what, we made a mistake last offseason. We don't need to keep compounding that mistake. Let's start with a clean slate, and let's see what we can do next year and in the draft this season, assuming that we can keep our pick. Man, what a wild, wild year it's been already for the Philadelphia 76ers. And I know it's probably been tough to keep up with the team and to stay too invested when they've been as bad as they have been, but I want to give a shout out to all my real ones. So if you're still hanging out here with us on this video, and at this point in the season in general, you are a real one, and I want you to type real one down in the comments section. I'm going to be going in there, liking everybody's comments who says they're a real one. I'll be responding to you because that's why I know you're a true diehard Sixers fan, and you just want to see this team improve, and at the end of the day, you just want to see this team win whatever it takes. Also, be sure to follow us on Instagram over at 76ers Now IG. That is the handle on Instagram. Posting updates, short form content, things you'll see, clips from the show as well. Just another way to stay in tune and stay up to date on the 76ers. Of course, with the trade deadline coming up and all these rumors flying out there about the Sixers possibly tanking, you want to be in the know, and we'll keep you updated here on the show. And until next time, catch you here on 76ers Now.